Well, good morning, CPC. My name is Hugh Halter, and I am a friend of Tyler's and a longtime friend of CPC, and helping out a little bit with the men's ministry as we kind of get the fraternity going again. Interesting, I don't know if you guys have heard yet, but we actually had a kickoff, and dudes showed up in cars because we can't obviously go in the building. And Tyler and I spoke a little bit, and whenever guys wanted to respond, they honked their horn. And it was, I'd say it was in the super weird category for sure. But when we were done, Tyler and I were kind of like, that was like pretty cool. It was a little bit New Testament-y, no building, no pros kind of running the show, just a bunch of guys beginning to hang out together, sitting in their cars. So if you were a part of that, it was a lot of fun. But if you're not, a lot of things are going to get going now. We obviously we're in a new series called UNSTUCK, and this is what we're all about right now. It's just we're all kind of have rigor mortis from COVID. We're a good solid 5 to 6 months into this thing right now, and if you are like me, you may not know what to do with all this, but for sure, sitting around waiting for something to end or to get back to normal is not a good place. So we're going to talk a little bit about that this morning. March 15, imagine this, March 15, 95% of all the churches in America stopped meeting. They stopped doing what they're used to doing. And we who went to church, we stopped going to church. Massive change, never before happened in our country. It's like it's a new experience altogether, and a lot of churches were freaking out, still are. I coach quite a few leaders around the country, and the initial push was, how do we just get back to normal? And now the issue is more, what is the call of the church? What is our mission? What are we doing? So this is what this is about today, and we're going to talk mostly about how to begin to get unstuck, specifically through a sense of loss and through suffering. And you may not have known this, but there's a word in the New Testament that we don't oftentimes talk about much, but it's the word apostolic or apostle. We'd say the Apostle Paul. We might look at the book of Acts. It's the great apostolic book. Apostolic is where we get the term missionary from. It means to be sent. And the nature of the church in this time and throughout all of history has been that no matter what is happening in the world, no matter how much difficulty the people of God might be going through, somehow the church keeps moving forward. It might get stuck for a little season, but eventually it moves. The biggest New Testament word is the word go. Go and make disciples. And so right now we have the opportunity, not just in East Bay, in this valley, in a place that CPC has had a very long, sort of powerful story in this whole community. This is not time to just shackle up, circle the wagons. This is, again, a real time for us to actually live out our apostolic, our sent calling. And one of the things that we're going to have to grapple with is how to begin to move through the stuff, all the stuff that we've been feeling. Now, I sat down in the hotel room, and I was mostly doing this for myself, but I thought, there's some loss I'm going to share about with the Halter family, but I wanted to go through just all the loss that we might be feeling. Sometimes even if you go to a counselor, they're going to say that to get moving again, you actually have to come to grips with what you've been feeling, the emotions that you've been feeling. So I'm just going to run through a list. You're going to think less of me as I go through this, but I'm going to try to be honest with you about all the ways that I have felt some loss during this kind of COVID season. And try to think back, I was trying to go to the very first time that I went from being kind of intrigued by COVID to actually going, this is a big deal. And if you remember, there were some boats parked off the coast, and it was, cruise ships, and we heard that there were people on those ships that were sick, and that we were holding those people out there. And if you remember, that's if you're like me, you might be a better person. But I remember thinking, wow, it's really bad for those people, but at least they're on a cruise ship, and no big deal, let's just keep them out there. And then all of a sudden, we started to hear about people on the mainland starting to get this thing. And even then, I remember thinking, that's too bad for them. And then about 3 weeks later, we heard that they were going to start to cancel sporting events. I started to get a little tense, started to feel a little worried, a little anxious, sporting events. And then the day that my wife will say lives in infamy, she say it's the day that I shut down. I heard that the Masters golf tournament was postponed and maybe canceled. And I almost cried. No, I didn't. I didn't almost cry, but I remember being super bummed and going, oh, man, like life is going to be terrible from this point on. Again, you'll think less of me. Back when we were pastoring in Denver, Colorado, I created 5 Sundays of the year that we called Sleep-In Sundays. And those 5 were the 4 main golf tournaments of the year, the majors, as we say. And the 1 week I went elk hunting. I basically canceled church so that I would not miss these golf tournaments. So all of a sudden, that's why I began to feel some loss. Maybe you feel some pain there. We eventually began to lose almost our entire entertainment industry. The idea of going out to the movie with your children, going to what we call pubs. Remember, pubs meant public houses. They were the places that people, after a long, hard day, would literally go and they would relate with people. And all of a sudden, we can't even go out and meet with our mates and hang out with the blokes or just have a nice dinner with a few friends. And although that may feel like it shouldn't bother us that much, humans are not made to just work, and we're not made to just grind. It's actually built into our psyche and our system that we need these breaks, these little moments where we can put it in idle and sort of get our hearts and our levity back. And so all of a sudden, the entire entertainment industry, last week, I don't know if you guys realize this, but the Kentucky Derby, 5 days before the Kentucky Derby ran, they canceled the whole deal. My wife's number one bucket list was that I would take her to the Kentucky Derby. So last year, I scrounged up all my coins and I bought 2 tickets, and we were not able to go. So it was a blow to the Halter family. I had renovated an old prison bus, so we were going to drive out, have a great time, and all of a sudden we're not going. Ticketmaster wouldn't even refund us the money. They just gave us a lot of money in credit, and so now I'm worried that my wife is just going to want me to take her to Florida Georgia Line concerts for the rest of my life. So I'm hoping that will not happen. Never liked those guys anyway. So we lost that. We lost our relational time with people. Don't just think about yourself. Think about your children. And most of their world, if they're teenagers, high school, junior high, their world revolves around peers. Their relational time they lost it. We lost some trust. We lost some trust in our news media to tell us the truth. We lost trust in our political leaders. It doesn't matter which side of the fence you're on, but I don't know anybody that's confident that our people right now, our leaders, are going to be able to figure this out at the national level, at our local level. People just seem to just go, it's just not going to work out. We've lost something very significant there in how we view the people that we elect, and we've lost some money, right? We lost about 20% of our employed people. We're at the place now where we go, well, maybe it'll come back, but we're at the place in our industry, which is a service industry in Alton, Illinois, where it will be really in the next 2 or 3 months that you now see businesses that were able to kind of hang on are not going to be able to hang on anymore. And so if we think we're past it, we're not. We're losing a lot of money. In our town of Alton, we started a kind of the living room for our city. It's an all-day coffee shop, event center, brunch cafe, and now we've got a coffee roastery. But we were kind of the place in our city that people went to kind of hang out and be together. All of a sudden, we're curbside only, and it just isn't going very well. We've lost about 60% of our sales. We've lost all of our weddings. We had a wedding every weekend from March all the way through the end of December. It was going to be our best year ever. It was going to be the year that we were going to have lots of money left over, and as a nonprofit, we could actually begin to do some really cool things to help people, and all of a sudden that's gone. There was also a gentleman in our city that was going to commit $75 million to the renovation of our downtown. And I got to be a part of his redevelopment team, and when COVID hit, he just stopped the entire deal. So it's not just money that we had that we're losing. A lot of us are not investing in most of our cities, especially in our poor cities like Alton. People have just stopped investing, and so there's no movement. A lot of loss there. We've lost, in one sense, our ability to create. When you don't have the financial resource, you stop taking risks. You stop being generous. And so other people lose. They lose because we're not giving to them as we used to. We've lost some unity, haven't we? Had a friend today call me, or actually she called a few days ago, and I called her back today. And we just talked because and she's like the Mother Teresa in our town. She just takes care of everybody. She's got a beautiful ministry there that just deals with crisis intervention. And she just shared a post on Facebook that was challenging our present leader at the time. And people in her own church just began to come after her, and she'll probably lose funding. But remember just the pain in her voice that she goes, I feel like I'm losing my friends because I believe something different about an issue, even a political issue. And I've heard this a lot. People literally losing friends right now because we can't agree on what to do with race riots or border issues or whatever it might be. So we've even lost our freedom to speak. At least that's how we feel, is we're not so sure it's even safe anymore, even to talk within our family. I know some people have said they've literally lost their relationship with their mother and father because of a time around the table. So for me, maybe just like you, when you really think about all the things that we've lost, there's a good bit of suffering. The biggest one for us, though, was that we lost our son Ryan about 7 weeks ago. He's 33 years of age. And I've spoken a few times here at the church and with the men. So many of you know the story, but our son Ryan had really severe epilepsy most of his life. And we knew that he would probably not live a long life. But he began to struggle the last couple of years and just began to decline. He finally fell down and hit his head, and it began kind of a 2-month process of brain surgeries, and we just started to see the lights kind of go out. And about 3 days before he died, our family, we just decided, let's just get him home. Cheryl and I were not even able to go to the hospital together, so we would take turns. Our kids and my son-in-laws, nobody was able to be with him, so we just literally brought him home, and for about 2.5 days, we each took turns just kind of holding his hand and just watching just the natural life that we had really come to love and get used to around the house. He just eventually died, and we lost him. And in that, as we recovered, I remember my wife even said, I feel like I've lost my calling. For her, she realized that Ryan's disability had led our family all the way around the country. And it had really guided how we thought about the church and how we thought about mission as something you do as a family with whatever you've got. And Ryan really, we call him the patriarch of our ministry. And for her, that was the reason why she got up in the morning, was to keep Ryan alive and to keep that story going. And so she felt like she's lost everything in that. And so whatever that is for you, maybe you realize there's a lot that people are feeling right now. This is not a joke anymore. We try to laugh about it, but you generally laugh when you feel significant pain. And it's not a laughing matter anymore. The suicides are at an all-time high for our youth today. It's just bad right now. And so when we think about, well, what is the biblical text? Where do we go with this? And maybe this is the one thing I want you to really remember from this talk. The biblical text for losing things is the entire Bible. It's the entire Bible. Yes, we can pick a few scripture that speak more to it, and I'll share a few with you, but you have to remember every word that was written in that beautiful ancient text that we have, every word was written to a suffering people that had lost almost everything. There wasn't a Danville back in the day. There wasn't a Portland, Oregon. It's just everybody struggled and suffered, and so everything that was said in that light. And so I just want to begin to just share the first scripture with you, and maybe just let it sink in now. At whatever level of suffering or loss you felt, it says, this is why we never give up. This is 2 Corinthians. Though our bodies are dying, our spirits are renewed day by day. For our present troubles are small and won't last very long. Yet they produce for us a glory that vastly outweighs them and will last forever. So we don't look at the troubles we can see now. Hard to do. But it's trying to give us an idea. We don't look at the troubles we see right now. Rather, we fix our gaze on things that cannot be seen. For the things that we see now will soon be gone, but the things that we cannot see will last forever. Try to remember this, that the witness of the good news throughout all the centuries, and it will be the case today, the witness of the good news is how the people of God move through bad news. Let me say it one more time. The witness of the good news has always been how the people of God move through the bad news that hits our life. The suffering that we go through, be it small, a loss of entertainment, or the loss of a son, or the loss of our employees, or the loss of our net worth, whatever it might be, the suffering is what gives us our credibility to speak to people. It's what gives us a character inside our movement, that we're not just a bunch of rhetoric, that we actually are people that have lived in real life, and we can still say there's something to look up to. So it's our credibility, it's what gives us character. And suffering and loss has always been the catalyst for true revival in a city, in a country, or in a place. And so let me begin to just read the second scripture to you. Now, let's save that. Let me just go practical with you for a minute, because I'm just a practical guy. I want you to think about just two things. I thought I'd give them 3 points, but I really just want you to keep it simple. 2 points when you're trying to begin to move through loss. Number one, I want you just to look for signs of life, okay? Look for signs of life. Some of you know a man named Mark Campbell that lives down in Santa Cruz. Tyler knows him very well. And I was down there, just had a few hours the other day. I went down and spent some time with him, and lives up on Passion Point. A lot of, great surfing over there. But I remember getting out of my car, and I was so excited because I'd been to this place before, and I always called it like one of the few magical places out there. Just like you would, if you've ever been to like Seattle Fish Market in the morning as the fog's coming through, got a cup of coffee. Those are like little magical moments. Santa Cruz in this moment was also another magical moment. You could see birds, you could smell things you don't normally smell. You see people surfing all over the place. There's people rolling by, biking by, walking by, jogging by. There's a lot of activity and conversation. And I told Mark it's one of those magical places. Like, I always rethink life when I'm there. And Mark goes, yeah, it's because you're a mystic. And we began to talk a little bit about the mystics. Mystics were, in our sort of ancient story, the mystics were the ones that focused more on the awe and the wonder and really the mystery of God more than the dogma or the law that many people would focus on. And so they were the ones that would say, like, you'll pick up more from God by looking at the trees or the ocean than sometimes you'll pick up even from looking at the text. And we began to just talk about the mystical nature, and I started to think about the morning after Ryan left our home through the hospice care. It was the morning Cheryl and I were sitting out on the back porch, and we have a very beautiful backyard. It looks off into the trees, and Cheryl and I noticed, well, she noticed first, but there were 3 little birds that appeared. Now, this is it's a weird kind of backstory. Kind of go with me for a minute. But when Ryan was alive, Ryan loved those red cardinal birds. So had nothing to do with the baseball team, but he would always notice when the red birds would come and land on a table or sit up on the wire or whatever it was. He also had 2 favorite women in his life. One was his grandmother, Audie, and Audie took care of Ryan when Cheryl was a single mom. Grandma Audie basically raised Ryan. And so she was just always that special person to him. She died, I think she was 93. But I remember when she died, we thought Ryan was going to die. And then he made it, and he met this young girl named Hallie. Hallie was also disabled, and they became very good friends. They went to a Young Life group together for disabled kids. And it was Hallie's mother, Shelley, that literally found this assisted living center for Ryan and Hallie to go to in Alton, Illinois. That's what moved us out to the city away from Denver. And Hallie died about 5 years ago from her disability. Again, we thought Ryan was going to die. And we literally thought there's no way he's going to make it. He was so sad. And he would talk about how he had already lost Grandma Audie, and now he had lost Hallie. Well, it was interesting. Cheryl and I are sitting out on the back porch, and Cheryl noticed that a little red cardinal had dropped down on this tree limb, and that there were two other birds right next to him. And she figured it out that the other ones were more brown in color, but that's the color of a female cardinal. And she just went, oh, it's Ryan and Hallie and Grandma Audie. And as she said it, she had a levity to her voice I had not seen that morning. And I remember kind of thinking like, look, it's probably not, but let's just go with this for now, because it lifted something in her spirit. And every day, this male cardinal would show up and these two little female cardinals. And even times where I'd be sitting out there in the morning by myself, I just almost expected that at some point with my time with the Lord, they would come on in. And it's about 90% of the time. I kind of look for them if they don't show up. But these are sort of what we call how the mystics would look at things. It may or may not be the reality that that's what God does, is he sends us birds and stuff. But what God does do is that he shows us signs of life. He begins to put little bread on the trail, and we go, oh, maybe you're out there. And the purpose of these really beautiful, whimsical, mysterious moments are to let us know that God actually is there, that he's in control. And what I noticed it did for me is I began to pray again. It took me a few weeks. The loss of my son shut me down. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to even really talk to the Lord. But it was those darn three birds that just caused me to begin to talk to him again. And something began to get me to move. And interesting that Jesus would say, look, guys, look at those birds over there. And he would tell them, guys, look up, look at the birds. Notice how they don't freak out, how the Father provides for them. And don't you know that God loves the birds, but he loves you guys so much more so why don't you just think about things like the birds think about it? Other times he said, hey, guys, look over there, the fields. Fields were big. You would have been walking through them, you'd be in them, right? And he would go, hey, look at that field, guys. That field, it's ripe unto harvest. So you walk by people all day long, they're in their masks. Do we ever stop and just look at people? Look at their eyes. That's all you can see, right? That those eyes are real people. Look at them. Get out there. Guys, if there's one thing you can do, if you're stuck, and you're stuck mostly because you're sad, one of the best things you can do is get outside, get out of your kitchen, get out of your basement, get out of your bedroom, get off the bed, take your mask off, and look at creation. God says creation is going to groan and speak for him. It's a gift to you. It's how the mystics used to follow God even before they had the scriptures, that they could sense his presence and that he is there for you just like he was back then. So look for signs of life. Secondly, and maybe the most important, community up. I know Tyler's been talking about this. I want to show you a picture. And the picture was last week. Cheryl and I went up to see Hallie's mom, Shelley. So that's my wife on the left there next to the flag, and Shelley's to the right of her. And I remember they didn't even know that I was taking this picture of them, but we went up there because Shelley's the only person Cheryl wants to listen to right now. Shelley had lost her daughter already, so Shelley was 5 years ahead and had processed a lot. Wasn't smarter than Cheryl, but she'd been where Cheryl was. And as me and Kurt were just kind of driving the boat, just talking, I just looked back and we were coming through this tunnel, if you will. And on the other side, I have other pictures. I don't have time to show you, but on the other side, the sun came out. It was beautiful. But I just snapped this photo, and I just entitled it "Coming Out of the Tunnel." And this is the story of the Christian faith. I'm going to read this passage to you. You've heard it, but maybe understand that this has more power than just trying to cheer you up. It says, "All praise to God, the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. God is our merciful Father and the source of all comfort. He comforts us in our troubles so that we can comfort others. And when they are troubled, we will be able to give them the same comfort God has given us. For the more we suffer for Christ, the more God will show us with his comfort through Christ. And even when we are weighed down with troubles, it is for your comfort and salvation even. Way beyond just trying to comfort somebody. This literally will affect somebody's salvation. For when we ourselves are comforted, we will certainly comfort you, and then you can patiently endure the same things we suffered. For we are confident that as you share in our sufferings, you will also share in the comfort God has given us. Shelley and Cheryl sitting there on a boat together, gospeling, good newsing each other, and Shelley helping Cheryl begin to move again. It is the nature of the call of the church. We always think that maybe, our job is to get out there and talk to everybody and try and get them to believe certain things. Do you recognize now maybe that the whole purpose for suffering, or at least one of the best things out of suffering, is that it's our ministry to the world? That is the people of God who have suffered and willfully and willingly accept the suffering that then pass it on, and it's our ministry literally to the world. When Jesus, I don't know why this came to mind, but for me, because it has always been about trying to do things in the world or to get people to believe something about God, the Holy Spirit was always that function or that aspect of God that was going to help me to say the right thing or whatever. I never really realized till this process of losing our son that the reason why Jesus said, guys, this will be better for you when I go away. Trust me, it'll be better when I'm finally gone, because I'm going to send you the Holy Spirit. That what he was really saying to them is, guys, it's going to be so hard. Just as this next couple weeks or next couple days will be very difficult. And then I'm going to go away, and it's going to be better for you, because the one thing you're going to need more than anything to keep going is you're going to need a comforter, a weeper. And we watched Jesus as he lived his life. He walked amongst people, and it says that he wept. He just saw people, and he saw that they were like a sheep without a shepherd, that they struggled, and he literally would be moved to emotion. Some of you need to hear this morning that no matter what level of loss you might be feeling, God has emotion for you. He actually does weep for you, but he has also given you his Spirit that weeps with you. And then as you and the Spirit can begin to connect again, that now when you see a neighbor weeping, you just simply move on over and you extend Jesus to them. And it's literally what holds the world together. It is our mission. Literally, what will ultimately pull you through loss and suffering is when you love somebody and you go, what I've been through can help them. And now you begin to move. We don't need the paid pros, guys. The sermons are important. The teaching is important. But the ministry of the church in a world that suffers is comfort. And so maybe the loss of Ryan for us, maybe it's another precious gem that's been deposited into our lives that maybe someday we'll be able to pull out, and we'll be able to maybe save a life even, maybe help somebody to begin to move again. So what about us? What about CPC? What about Danville? I drive around, I see Land Rovers, I see expensive cars, and I see a lot of sad faces. I've done a lot of walking in the last 3 days here, and I've noticed that it doesn't feel like it used to feel. Something's changed, and I can feel it in your city. It's not like it used to be. People are more reserved. There's a sadness there. And your role as the people of God under the banner of CPC, your mission, your apostolic call to keep moving is for the people of this valley. And the ministry that you will give, some of it might be this. Some of your friends may hear this. They might be encouraged by it. But you are literally the ministry. You're the ones that reconcile and bring people together and then bring them to God. And you will do that as you just simply give them a call and say, hey, thought about you the other day. Just wondering how you're really doing. That's all I do anymore. I literally just call people when I'm driving now. I just try to call as many people as I can. And all I ask them is I say, hey, Joe, I was thinking of you today. Wondering how you're doing. Sometimes I'll literally ask people, what have you lost in this? And then when they share it, then I share the stuff I've lost. And then sometimes we laugh together, sometimes we cry together, but we keep moving. And that is the point, we keep moving. So we'll end with this out of 2 Corinthians 4:10. It says, we always carry around in our body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be revealed in our body. Some people will go through suffering and they will try to stop it and keep it from hitting them their whole lives. We'll try to live in a gated community and make sure they always vote so that none of this bad stuff hits them. But now they're realizing that you cannot protect yourself from the pain of this world. But the Christians are going to be the ones that go, no, we see the suffering over there. We're not presently living in it, but they're suffering over there. So let's go over and we're going to go ahead and begin to carry some of that suffering. And when we do that, then the life of Jesus begins to show up. What the writer was saying to these people was, just as Jesus died, be ready. You may have to lose your life. But later on, when the church was named by Jesus, remember the word that was the most common word given for the church was the body. So let's read it again, thinking about CPC as a movement of God's people. We, CPC, always carry around in our body, our church, the death of Jesus. We relish and we thank Him for suffering and for losing what He lost for our sake, so that maybe the life of Jesus can begin to be revealed in our body again. May CPC be a suffering movement led by a suffering servant. And may we get out there. Let's go. They need us. These people are losing a lot, just like we have. So let's lend a hand. Let's take our place in the story and the legacy of this church. This may be, can be, should be, maybe our finest hour. So may God bless you, and smile a little bit more, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Men, I'll see you soon, and take care.